devotion, dedication. Also, you know, she's got maybe she's too humble to say, too modest to say, but she's got a great fighting spirit, no doubt. She's a warrior, goes out there and doesn't give a single game. Actually, she has probably the most bagels of anyone in women's tennis. It speaks about how seriously and professionally she's taking every single point and game on the court. So that's very admirable. I really like that kind of champion spirit and mindset.
No, yeah, I would be lying to you if I said I had no reservations. Obviously, you guys know who I am and the things I speak about, and I was pretty much on almost every player call that I could make.
Something happened after Coco Gauff's recent showdown that no one expected. Aryna Sabalenka thought she could get away with throwing shade after losing. But her comments didn't just frustrate fans. They caught the attention of the last person she wanted involved. Because out of nowhere, Novak Djokovic stepped forward and shut the entire narrative down, humbling Sabalenka in a way that has completely flipped this story upside down. What started as a moment of post-match frustration turned into a controversy that exposed far more than Sabalenka planned. And Djokovic made sure everyone saw the truth. But this wasn't the whole story, because the real drama only began after Sabalenka walked off the court.
I think today I didn't really handle myself quite well, mentally, I would say. So basically that's it. I was just making unforced errors. I don't know, I have to check the statistics. I think she won the match not because she played incredible, just because I made all of those mistakes from, if you look from the outside, kind of from an easy balls.
Right after the match ended, Sabalenka's frustration didn't just show, it practically spilled across the entire court. Instead of offering Coco Gauff the respect most players give after a hard-fought battle, Sabalenka let her irritation speak louder than any handshake could. She barely made eye contact at the net, gave a quick forced tap of the racket, and turned away before Coco even finished thanking the crowd. Then came the interviews, where Sabalenka's frustration became even clearer. She downplayed Coco's performance, shifting the blame toward her own mistakes, the conditions, and everything else she could point to. She spoke as if the match slipped away because of outside factors, not because Coco outplayed her point after point. Fans noticed immediately. Social media lit up with people calling out the subtle disrespect, the passive-aggressive tone, and the refusal to give Coco credit for a match she clearly deserved to win.
And when I look at Coco, I had a chance, obviously, to go to Roland Garros. I was at the French Open. She worked so hard every single match to get to the finals. And I just love the fact that she has not only the will to win, the fight to win. What I loved also is how she just takes the high road, no matter what. We all have heard the comments from Sabalenka, her negativity, talking about Coco wasn't better than her, that Coco didn't beat her, that she lost the match because of her errors. But I just want to say, when you mess with the bull, you get the horn.
Commentators pointed out how unusual Sabalenka's attitude was for someone of her experience. She's known for her intensity, but this felt different, sharp, dismissive, almost as if she was trying to rewrite what had just happened. It was the kind of quiet dig that cuts deeper than a loud outburst, and the type of energy that players feel instantly. But what Sabalenka didn't realize was that her attitude wasn't going unnoticed. Because someone much bigger, much more respected, and far more influential in the tennis world was watching all of this unfold, and he wasn't buying a single part of her narrative. While most people were busy reacting to the match itself, Novak Djokovic was paying attention to something else entirely: the energy, the body language, the tone Sabalenka used after the loss. Djokovic has been around long enough to recognize when a player is frustrated, and when a player crosses a line. And in this case, he saw exactly what fans were complaining about. Behind the scenes, Djokovic had already been impressed with Coco Gauff's discipline, professionalism, and fairness on the court.
Also, she's got maybe she's too humble to say, too modest to say, but she's got a great fighting spirit, no doubt. She's a warrior, goes out there and doesn't give a single game.
So when Sabalenka's subtle digs started circulating online, he didn't stay silent. Djokovic isn't someone who jumps into WTA drama, especially when it involves two of the tour's biggest stars, but this time he made an exception. According to those close to Djokovic, he immediately questioned why Coco was suddenly being portrayed as the problem, when she had handled herself with absolute poise. He knew the pressure that comes with being a young, rising superstar. he lived it himself. And he also knew how quickly narratives can get twisted by frustrated rivals, trying to protect their pride. Djokovic saw through Sabalenka's behavior instantly. She wasn't giving an honest analysis of the match. She was trying to soften the blow of her own defeat by making Coco look less deserving.
And what I love about Coco is that she can't say anything, but these women have come after her, whether it's been Sabalenka, Iga, Rybakina. They've made comments, even when Coco was actually number 3 in the world, they talked about them being the big 3. So every turn she has to face not just her opponent, but the ridicule from her colleagues.
And that's exactly why Djokovic eventually spoke out. Because once the clips went viral and fans started debating who was right, Djokovic stepped in, and what he said changed everything. When Novak Djokovic finally broke his silence, the entire tone of the controversy shifted in an instant. He didn't tiptoe around the situation or hide behind vague comments. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had seen enough. Djokovic praised Coco Gauff's professionalism, her mental strength, and her unwavering fairness on the court, highlighting qualities that even veteran players struggle to maintain under pressure. But it was the way he defended her that caught everyone off guard. Djokovic didn't attack Sabalenka directly, but his words drew a clear line between players who accept responsibility and those who let their frustration turn into excuses. He emphasized that Coco did absolutely nothing wrong in the match, and that her behavior, whether confronting a bad call or staying composed after winning, showed maturity far beyond her age. He even highlighted something few people talk about: Coco's consistency in holding herself to a high standard. Djokovic pointed out that she fights for every point with the same intensity, regardless of who's on the other side of the net. That kind of dedication, he said, is what makes great champions, not just how hard they hit the ball, but how they carry themselves in the toughest moments. Everyone knew exactly who he was referring to when he mentioned certain players trying to rewrite the story after a loss. He didn't need to say Sabalenka's name. The message was crystal clear, and the tennis world instantly connected the dots. Djokovic's comments spread like wildfire. Fans, analysts, and even other players began sharing his statements, praising him for stepping up when the conversation around Coco had turned unfair. And as the clips circulated, the narrative Sabalenka tried to push started crumbling. What began as a simple post-match interview had now turned into something much bigger, because Djokovic had just exposed the truth Sabalenka hoped would stay hidden. And once he weighed in, the pressure shifted straight onto her shoulders. Djokovic's decision to step into this situation wasn't random. He's not someone who inserts himself into drama for attention, especially not when it involves players outside the ATP Tour. But this time was different. He saw something in the way Coco Gauff was being treated that struck a nerve, something he recognized from his own career. Djokovic has dealt with unfair narratives, biased commentary, and rivals trying to twist situations to protect their egos. He knows what it feels like to have people question your integrity, instead of acknowledging your performance. So when he saw Sabalenka subtly pushing the idea that she lost because of anything except Coco outplaying her, he knew exactly what was happening. He'd lived through it. And that's why his reaction was so strong. He wasn't just defending Coco's professionalism, he was calling out a pattern he's seen throughout his entire career, where talented, hard-working athletes get targeted with unfair criticism simply because they don't fit the narrative someone else wants to push. Behind the scenes, people close to Djokovic said he was frustrated with how quickly fans online began questioning Coco's intentions based on Sabalenka's behavior. He found it ridiculous that a player who carried herself with so much composure was being painted as the problem. To him, the situation was clear. Coco Gauff earned her victory, handled the pressure with maturity, and deserved respect, not passive-aggressive comments disguised as post-match analysis. Djokovic stepped in because he's always believed in fairness, consistency, and accountability in tennis. And he wasn't about to watch a young star get sidelined by someone else's bruised ego. His words didn't just defend Coco, they exposed exactly why Sabalenka's behavior was so disappointing. But as Djokovic's comments gained traction, the spotlight started shifting in a direction Sabalenka didn't expect and definitely didn't want. Once Djokovic's comments started spreading, everything changed for Sabalenka. What she assumed would be brushed off as normal post-match frustration suddenly became the center of global discussion. Fans who originally thought her behavior was just emotional began taking a second look. Analysts replayed her interviews, slowed down her reactions at the net, and pointed out every moment where she downplayed Coco's performance. All the things she tried to slip under the radar were now impossible to ignore. Sabalenka went from being the frustrated runner-up to being the one people felt crossed a line. And the reason was simple. Djokovic's words didn't just defend Coco, they forced everyone to reevaluate what actually happened. For the first time since the match, Sabalenka felt the weight of public opinion turn against her. Comment sections filled with fans saying things like, "If Djokovic noticed it, then it wasn't just us, and there's no reason to disrespect Coco. She earned that win." Even tennis journalists, who usually stay neutral, started hinting that Sabalenka let her emotions get the best of her. She didn't respond publicly, but the silence only made the situation feel more tense. Every day that passed without a statement made it look like she had no defense for her behavior. And the more people shared Djokovic's praise of Coco, the smaller Sabalenka's attempts to rewrite the match seemed. The worst part? Sabalenka had no idea this situation would grow so fast. What started as a few subtle digs had exploded into a debate she could no longer control. And Djokovic's voice, respected, powerful, and influential, made it nearly impossible for her to escape the backlash. But the truth is, this tension didn't begin with Sabalenka's comments. It all started on the court, during a match where emotions ran high, and Coco Gauff was forced to rise above everything thrown her way. The match itself was intense from the very first point. Sabalenka came out firing, trying to overwhelm Coco with raw power and aggression. For a while, it looked like she had control. Her serves were landing, her forehand was exploding off the racket, and the crowd could feel the tension building with every rally. Sabalenka thrives in chaos, and early on, she tried to drag Coco into that whirlwind with her. But Coco didn't budge. Instead of matching Sabalenka's intensity with emotion, she did the complete opposite. She stayed calm, calculated, and brutally disciplined. Every time Sabalenka screamed after a miss or smashed a ball out of frustration, Coco responded by locking in even deeper. That silence, that composure, annoyed Sabalenka more than any comeback could. As the match went on, the difference became impossible to ignore. Coco wasn't just playing tennis. She was controlling the rhythm, dictating the rallies, and forcing Sabalenka into mistakes she couldn't mentally recover from. The more Coco stayed composed, the more Sabalenka unraveled, and by the final set, it was clear who was in charge. Coco outplayed her, outsmarted her, and outlasted her. The same calmness Sabalenka tried to mock after the match was the exact reason Coco won. And deep down, Sabalenka knew it. That's what made her post-match behavior sting even more. Because the match didn't leave room for excuses. But this wasn't the first time Coco had stayed strong in the face of disrespect or unfairness. She's built her career on standing up for herself, even when the moment gets uncomfortable. And that history plays a huge part in why Djokovic defended her so fiercely. Coco Gauff has never been the type to let disrespect or unfair treatment slide. Even at a young age, she built a reputation for staying composed under pressure and speaking up when something wasn't right. That's one of the main reasons Djokovic stepped in so confidently. Because Coco has always shown she handles tense moments with maturity, honesty, and fairness. A perfect example was her clash with Laura Siegemund at the US Open. Siegemund repeatedly stalled, pushed the time limit, and the umpire barely responded. Instead of quietly accepting it, Coco walked up to the chair and demanded consistent calls. The crowd immediately supported her, seeing how respectfully and firmly she handled the situation. It showed she wasn't afraid to challenge unfairness, even if it meant making things uncomfortable. Moments like that defined Coco's character long before this situation with Sabalenka. She doesn't play mind games. She doesn't point fingers. She stands her ground with calm confidence. So when Sabalenka tried to spin the narrative after their match, fans already knew Coco's track record. And so did Djokovic. That's why his defense made such an impact. He wasn't speaking for someone who stirs drama. He was supporting a player who has consistently shown integrity. And now, because of that history, the pressure created by Djokovic's comments is falling directly where it belongs on Sabalenka. Once Djokovic's comments went viral, the entire narrative flipped. Coco Gauff came out of the situation looking stronger than ever, praised for her composure, maturity, and professionalism. Instead of being pulled into Sabalenka's frustration, Coco's reputation only grew, and fans rallied behind her with even more respect. Sabalenka, however, found herself in a spotlight she wasn't prepared for. What she thought was normal post-match frustration suddenly looked like a pattern of disrespect. Clips of her reactions spread everywhere, and analysts began openly questioning her behavior. Her decision to stay silent didn't help. If anything, it made the backlash feel heavier. Meanwhile, Djokovic's intervention sparked a larger conversation about how top players act after a loss. Fans began comparing Coco's calmness to Sabalenka's defensiveness, and the difference was impossible to ignore. In the end, Coco gained admiration, Djokovic earned praise for defending fairness, and Sabalenka was left facing criticism she never expected. Djokovic didn't just support Coco, he completely shifted the tone of the entire controversy. But now the question falls to you. Do you think Djokovic was right to call out Sabalenka's behavior? Did Sabalenka cross a line with her comments? And does Coco Gauff's response set a new standard for how players should act under pressure? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters, and this debate is far from over.